Some men are remembered for a few weeks, some for a few years, but one kind of man is remembered for a lifetime. If you've ever wondered why a woman can forget promises, gifts, even heartbreak, but never forget a certain man, this will explain everything. Stay till the end, because the last point is the one that changes everything. Emotional safety is the invisible foundation of every bond that lasts longer than the moment. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, and it does not announce itself with grand gestures. It arrives quietly through tone, through patience, through what a man chooses not to do when he has power. When a woman feels emotionally safe, her nervous system relaxes for the first time in a long while. She no longer scans every sentence for hidden danger. She no longer calculates what version of herself will be accepted. She stops rehearsing what she is about to say before she says it. In that space, her real self emerges, not the guarded self, not the pleasing self, not the defensive self, but the honest one. And the brain does something remarkable in that moment. It records the environment as safety. Memory is not just data, it is emotion stored in the body. Fear stores sharply, pain stores deeply, but safety stores permanently, because the mind is always searching for the place where it no longer had to protect itself. A man who creates emotional safety becomes associated with relief, with rest, with exhale. She may forget the timeline of their conversations. She may forget what they argued about. She may even forget the exact reasons they stopped speaking. But she will never forget how her body felt when she was with him. Emotional safety is created in moments that look small to the outside world. When he listens without interrupting, when he does not mock what matters to her, when he holds her emotions without trying to fix them, when he does not use her vulnerability as a weapon later, when her tears do not threaten his ego, when her anger does not make him withdraw, when her past does not trigger jealousy, but understanding. Each of these moments trains the brain to associate him with protection instead of danger. That association becomes a neural imprint. The mind does not release easily what once felt like shelter. This is why emotional safety creates permanent memory, because relationships are not remembered through logic. They are remembered through regulation. A woman may be drawn to many men through attraction, excitement, or intensity, but she bonds through the one who regulates her nervous system, the one who does not spike her anxiety, the one who does not keep her guessing where she stands, the one whose presence feels stable rather than overwhelming. Chaos creates obsession, but safety creates attachment. Obsession fades when the stimulus disappears. Attachment lingers long after the connection ends. The man who becomes a place of emotional rest is no longer just a person in her memory. He becomes a reference point. Every future connection is unconsciously measured against the way she once felt when she didn't have to shrink, perform, chase, or defend. Even if she walks away, even if life separates them, the sensation of safety does not disappear from the nervous system. It remains stored as a feeling her body knows to be possible, as a standard her heart now recognizes, as a quiet reminder of what connection can feel like when love is not mixed with fear. And so the man who offered emotional safety does not stay behind as nostalgia. He stays embedded as a memory the body remembers before the mind does, in the stillness between thoughts, in the way her chest softens when she feels understood, in the way silence becomes comfortable instead of threatening, in the way she learns that being seen does not have to come with the cost of being wounded. Consistency is quiet power. It does not arrive with fireworks or dramatic declarations, and that is exactly why it reshapes memory more deeply than any grand gesture ever could. Grand gestures excite the nervous system for a moment, but consistency teaches the nervous system what to expect. A dramatic surprise can make a heart race, but it is repeated presence that makes a heart trust. When a man shows up regularly, when his behavior does not swing wildly with his moods, when his affection does not disappear after conflict, something inside a woman begins to settle. She no longer braces for emotional whiplash. She no longer second guesses every expression of care. Her mind stops asking, "Is this real?" and starts assuming, "This is who he is." And identity is built not from what we do once, but from what we do repeatedly. Consistency slowly converts hope into certainty, and certainty is what allows attachment to deepen without fear. Grand gestures live in extremes. They come with intensity, often followed by absence. They feel powerful because they spike emotion, but they fail to build trust because they lack continuity. A bouquet after neglect, an apology after emotional withdrawal, a promise after repeated disappointment. These moments flash brightly, but they also confuse the nervous system. The brain learns to associate love with unpredictability, relief with chaos, affection with emotional debt. Consistency works in the opposite direction. It does not shock the system, it stabilizes it. A good morning message that arrives every day at the same time rewires expectation. A calm response that appears even during tension retrains fear. A steady tone that does not fluctuate with ego teaches safety without ever announcing that it is doing so. Over time, the body internalizes the rhythm. The woman may not consciously analyze it, but her nervous system learns that she does not need to chase, test, provoke, or perform to receive reliability. This is why consistency beats grand gestures in memory formation. The brain stores patterns far more deeply than isolated events. One dramatic moment may become a story, but repeated steady moments become atmosphere. They become the emotional environment in which her identity unfolds. Consistency tells her that affection is not something she earns through perfection or patience, but something she can expect through ordinary existence. It reduces the background noise of self-doubt. It quiets the internal dialogue that constantly asks whether she is too much or not enough. And in that quiet, another association forms. The man becomes linked with emotional predictability, and predictability lowers threat perception in the brain. What the brain perceives as low threat becomes home. A man who is consistent also becomes trusted in ways that intensity alone never can. His words carry weight because his actions have already confirmed them. His silence does not trigger panic because his return has always followed before. His boundaries do not feel like rejection because his care has never disappeared behind them. Over time, he is no longer processed as a source of stimulation, but as a source of stability. And stability, while less addictive than chaos, is far more enduring. The heart may get hooked on uncertainty, but it roots itself in reliability. That rooting happens slowly, quietly, without spectacle, without needing to be announced. Consistency does not compete for attention the way grand gestures do, but it wins loyalty in the background of the mind. It becomes the emotional baseline against which everything else is measured. When consistency is present, stress drops, defenses soften, expectations regulate. Trust stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling like a natural response to repeated evidence, and the memory does not cling to one dramatic moment, but absorbs 1,000 small confirmations of presence, patience, reliability, and emotional follow-through woven so seamlessly into daily life that they no longer feel like effort, only like reality. Respect creates a kind of value that attraction alone can never replace. Desire may draw attention, charm may spark interest, and affection may form attachment, but respect is what makes a man irreplaceable in a woman's internal world. Respect is felt in how he speaks when he is frustrated, in how he listens when he disagrees, in how he handles power without using it to dominate. A woman is constantly observing, not always consciously, but instinctively, how safe her dignity is around a man. When he respects her boundaries without punishing her for having them, when he does not belittle her emotions to prove superiority, when he does not reduce her intelligence to protect his ego, her nervous system receives a powerful message. Her worth is not conditional here. In that recognition, something inside her settles into certainty. She stops bracing for humiliation. She stops shrinking to be tolerated. She stops over-explaining to justify her existence. Respect allows her to remain whole rather than fragmented in a relationship. The most dangerous damage many people experience in relationships is not betrayal or abandonment, but degradation. Being made to feel small, dramatic, irrational, replaceable. Respect repairs what humiliation destroys. It tells a woman that her voice does not need to be softened to be accepted, that her disagreement does not threaten her security, that her confidence does not require apology. And when a man offers respect consistently, it reshapes how she experiences herself, not just with him, but in every room she enters after him. She begins to carry herself differently. She speaks with less hesitation. She doesn't seek permission to take up space. The man who respects her becomes linked, not just with affection, but with the version of herself that feels empowered rather than diminished, and the mind does not release easily the source of that transformation. Respect is also revealed through restraint. Through what he chooses not to say in anger, through what he refuses to weaponize in conflict, through the private information he protects rather than exploits, through the way he handles disagreements without turning them into character assassinations. A man who respects a woman does not study her weaknesses to gain leverage. He studies her strengths to understand her world. Even when the relationship becomes difficult, even when emotions become intense, respect keeps the floor stable beneath every conversation. Harsh words can be forgotten, but the emotional posture behind them cannot. A woman may forgive many things, but she never unlearns how a man made her feel about her worth. This is why respect builds irreplaceable value, because many men can offer attention, desire, and even devotion, but very few offer dignity without strings attached. When a woman realizes that she does not have to trade her self-respect to keep a man interested, a deep imprint forms. The relationship no longer feels like a performance. It feels like a partnership of equals. She is not loved in spite of her strength, but in acknowledgement of it. She is not tolerated for her differences, but understood through them. Respect anchors attachment in esteem rather than dependency. Even if love shifts, even if circumstances change, the memory of being respected remains intact because it rewrote her internal standard of what she deserves, of what love is allowed to look like, of how she is meant to be treated when emotions run high, when mistakes are made, when expectations collide, when two imperfect people attempt to remain connected without reducing each other to something smaller than they truly are. A growth-oriented man leaves a mark that does not fade with time because his influence does not end with the relationship. It continues unfolding inside a woman long after circumstances have changed. He does not attach himself to comfort zones, and he does not encourage stagnation disguised as peace. His presence quietly challenges limitation, not through pressure, but through example. the way he disciplined his own habits, questioned his own fears, expanded his own awareness, and refused to remain the same man year after year becomes a silent invitation for her to do the same. Around him, mediocrity feels exposed, excuses feel transparent, and unrealized potential feels close enough to touch. He does not demand growth from her as a condition for love, yet his way of living naturally elevates the standards by which she measures herself. A growth-oriented man changes how a woman thinks about effort, resilience, and possibility. He introduces her to discomfort as a doorway rather than a warning. When she doubts herself, he does not rescue her from uncertainty, but helps her build the muscles to stand inside it. When she fears failure, he does not shame her fear, but reframes it as evidence that she is standing on the edge of expansion. His influence is subtle but persistent. Over time, she begins to question the narratives she once accepted about her limits. She takes risks she would have avoided. She speaks when she would have stayed silent. She steps forward where she once waited for permission. The shift does not feel forced. It feels earned. And because it is earned, it becomes integrated into her identity rather than dependent on his presence. What makes this impact so deep is that growth-oriented men do not try to be heroes in a woman's story. They do not save, they strengthen. They do not replace her self-trust with dependency. They reinforce it with confidence. They do not become the source of her power. They become the mirror that shows her she already had it. This kind of influence embeds itself differently in memory. It is not remembered as romance alone, but as transformation. Even if emotions change, even if paths diverge, the internal shifts remain active. The woman does not return to who she was before him because she no longer fits inside that version of herself. A growth-oriented man also reshapes how a woman experiences time. The future feels less threatening and more expandable. Her goals stretch further. Her tolerance for environments that suppress her begins to erode. She grows allergic to stagnation because she has tasted expansion. She becomes less willing to shrink for approval because she has experienced what it feels like to be seen as capable. And that internal recalibration becomes irreversible. The memory of that man becomes intertwined not with comfort, but with evolution. She does not remember him only for how he loved her, but for how he altered the trajectory of her life. This is why growth-oriented men leave a deep impact even without dramatic expression. Their value is not stored in moments of intensity, but in shifts of identity. The woman may forget specific conversations, but she will always recognize the chapter of her life that changed direction, the way she learned to challenge herself, the way she stopped settling, the way she began choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term validation. The man becomes associated not with a relationship alone, but with expansion itself, with the season where she outgrew fear, raised her standards, and became more than she believed she could be before she encountered a presence that quietly refused to let her remain small. Presence is not about being physically near someone. It is about being emotionally available in a way that can be felt without words. Many people are around each other every day and still feel unseen, unheard, and emotionally alone. Presence is a quality of attention, not a matter of proximity. A man can sit beside a woman for hours and still be absent if his mind is elsewhere, if his listening is superficial, if his responses are automatic rather than intentional. And another man can speak only a few words, but those words land deeply because his awareness is fully anchored in the moment. Presence communicates without performance that she matters right now. Not as an obligation, not as a role, not as a responsibility, but as a living, breathing human experience that deserves full engagement. Possession, on the other hand, is about control, about certainty, about the anxiety of losing rather than the desire to understand. It seeks to claim rather than to connect. A possessive man may monitor, restrict, demand, or define, but none of those create the internal experience of being valued as a whole person. They create pressure, tension, and a subtle sense of being managed rather than met. Presence does the opposite. It does not grip. It opens. It does not insist. It receives. A man who is present does not hover through jealousy or interrogate through insecurity. He stays grounded enough to allow space without fearing abandonment. That emotional spaciousness becomes safety. Within it, a woman can breathe without shrinking, speak without bracing, exist without editing herself to avoid emotional consequences. What makes presence more powerful than possession is that it fulfills a deeper psychological need than ownership ever can. Possession tries to secure connection from the outside through rules, labels, and surveillance. Presence secures connection from the inside through attunement. When a man is present, he notices changes in tone that others overlook. He senses hesitation before words appear. He reads emotional shifts without needing them spelled out. He stays with discomfort instead of escaping it. He does not rush to fix what he does not yet understand. That steadiness sends a powerful message to the nervous system. This moment is safe enough to be real in. Over time, the body begins to associate that man not with anxiety or performance, but with authenticity. Presence also reveals itself in how a man handles silence. Silence with presence feels full. Silence with possession feels heavy. One invites connection beyond words. The other pressures the unspoken into tension. A present man is comfortable not knowing everything immediately. He allows emotions to unfold at their own pace. He does not force clarity before readiness. He does not extract confessions to calm his insecurity. That restraint is not weakness. It is mastery over the impulse to dominate uncertainty. And that mastery is deeply felt. A woman recognizes when she is being held with patience instead of trapped with expectation. This is why presence forms an imprint that possession cannot. Possession may create attachment through fear of loss, but presence creates attachment through peace of being known. One binds through pressure, the other through recognition. A woman may comply under possession, but she opens under presence. And what opens becomes deeply encoded in memory. The moments where she was fully seen without being claimed, understood without being constrained, accepted without being managed, linger at a level beneath conscious recall, stored in the way her shoulders dropped, in the way her voice softened, in the way she stopped guarding the spaces she once defended, in the way her body recognized that connection did not have to cost her freedom. A man who knows when to let go rewrites the meaning of attachment in a woman's mind because he proves that love is not measured by how tightly one holds, but by how consciously one releases. Letting go is not abandonment when it is rooted in awareness. It is restraint shaped by dignity. Most people cling when they feel afraid, they chase when they feel uncertain, and they tighten their grasp when they sense distance. A man who knows when to let go does the opposite. He recognizes when holding on would turn into possession, when pursuit would turn into pressure, when presence would turn into control. And in choosing not to force a connection to stay, he preserves something far rarer than proximity, self-respect on both sides. That choice shocks the nervous system because it contradicts the usual expectation that love must be proven through struggle, suffering, and emotional endurance. For a woman, being released instead of restrained creates a powerful emotional contradiction. She expects resistance. She braces for guilt, accusation, manipulation, or emotional debt. But instead, she is met with emotional maturity, with the quiet recognition that forcing timing, feelings, or healing only corrupts what was once real. A man who lets go without degradation shows that he values connection enough not to contaminate it with desperation. He does not chase to soothe his ego. He does not beg to escape loneliness. He does not threaten to maintain relevance. He trusts that whatever is meant to return will do so without being hunted. That trust becomes a mirror in which a woman sees herself differently. She is no longer a prize to be captured or a possession to be defended. She is a person allowed to choose without consequence attached to compliance. Letting go also preserves memory in its purest form. When a man exits without cruelty, without character assassination, without rewriting the past to manage rejection, he freezes the relationship in its most honest emotional state. There is no need for her to protect herself by distorting what they were. There is no need to demonize him to survive the separation. There is no psychological rewriting required to escape emotional conflict. The memory remains clean, uncontaminated, and clean memory lasts longer than conflicted closure. The man becomes associated not with loss, but with integrity, not with heartbreak, but with self-command, not with pain, but with restraint that honored the connection enough not to turn it into a battlefield. A man who knows when to let go also teaches a woman something profound about her own worth. He shows her that she does not have to stay out of guilt, that she does not have to perform loyalty under pressure, that her autonomy does not threaten real connection. And in teaching her that, he rewires her attachment patterns. She learns that love does not always mean holding on. Sometimes it means stepping back so that what is real can breathe instead of suffocate. That lesson becomes embedded far beyond the relationship itself. It travels with her into every future bond. It alters what she tolerates. It reshapes how she interprets control. It elevates what she recognizes as emotional strength rather than emotional dependency. This is why the man who lets go becomes unforgettable, not because he stayed, but because he left without collapsing into bitterness, without shrinking into manipulation, without poisoning the ground they once stood on together. His absence does not feel like rejection. It feels like a boundary drawn with clarity rather than fear. And that form of exit carries a gravity that presence alone cannot create, because it demonstrates that his identity is not built on being chosen, but on knowing who he is, even when he is no longer held by the relationship, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when walking away costs him the comfort of familiarity, even when staying would have been easier than releasing something that once mattered deeply.